Okay, we're going to go ahead and go through 5 different examples on how to complete the square. Hopefully you watched our first lesson on completing the square where we talked through the steps and the procedures and the reasoning behind completing the square. We would do this when we have equations in the form of x squared plus bx equals d. We complete the square in order to find the roots or zeros of a quadratic equation. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first example. It is in the correct form, x squared plus bx equals d. In order to complete the square, we're going to go ahead and take our b term, cut it in half, and square it. So first we have to identify what b is. In this example, our b is -4. So we have to then take our b, cut it in half, and square it. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I take -4, I cut it in half, and then I square it. -4 cut in half is -2. When I square it, I get 4. This is my c. So I'm going to go up to my equation, rewrite it. I've got, oops, where's my pen here? Somehow my pen disappeared. Let's try that again. I've got x squared minus 4x, and then I'm going to add my c in here. Rewrite the rest of my equation, and I'm also going to add my c in here. Remember, whatever we do on the left side, we must also do to the right side. I'm going to go ahead and simplify, which means on the left side of my equation, I'm going to factor. And you can use your X box, if you like, to come up with your factors. So in this case, -2 times -2 gives me +4, but when I add it, I get -4. You can use your X box, or you can recognize that you created a perfect square trinomial, which means it can be factored into a binomial to the second power. So my x minus 2 would be one of the factors, and the other one would also be x minus 2. You can rewrite that as x minus 2 to the second power equals, on the other side, I'm going to add this up. -3 plus 4 is a +1. From here, my steps would be to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. I'm going to take the square root on both sides. When I take the square root of x minus 2 to the second power, I just get x minus 2. On the other side, when I take the square root of 1, I get a +1 or I get a -1. From here, I have to take this equation and solve it. It's really 2 different equations. I get x minus 2 equals a +1, but I also have x minus 2 equals a -1. This is how we end up with those 2 solutions, or 2 roots or zeros. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2 to both sides, and I'll get x equals 3, add 2, and I'll get x equals +1. So I've got 2 solutions here to my quadratic formula up there. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the next example. And I'm actually going to erase the work that I have up there on my board. So again, if you want to go back and review it and take a look at it and slow it down, go for it. All right, taking a look at example 2. Again, I need it in the form of x squared plus bx equals d. And I don't have that right now. I actually have a c term right here, and I got to get rid of it. I got to move it over to the other side. So when I do that, my equation becomes x squared plus 10x equals, we're going to add that 11 to both sides, 11. From here, I'm going to take my b, which is 10. I'm going to take my b, cut it in half, and square it. So 10 cut in half and squared is 5 to the second power, or 25. So that becomes my c. So in my equation, I'm going to rewrite it and insert my c here on the left side, and also insert it over here on the right side. Next comes the simplifying piece, and on the left side that means factoring. And I'm going to jump right into factoring and getting the binomial to the second power. Remember that when you took half of b, you got 5. Guess what? That's the factor, x plus 5. Okay, whatever your b is, when you have it, that becomes the factor. So if this was negative 10 and I halved it, I would get negative 5. So it would be x minus 5 in my parentheses. But in this case, it's a positive 10. I cut 10 in half, I got 5. That's my factor. On the other side, simplifying just means adding those two terms together. So that would be 36. From here, we're going to go ahead and take the square roots. And the square root of x plus 5 to the second power is just x plus 5. On the other side, the square root of 36 is going to be a positive or a negative 6. I have to break this into two equations. X plus 5 equals 6, but also x plus 5 equals, whoa, see if I can erase that, equals negative 6. Then my job is just solving these two little mini math problems. I get x equals, we're subtracting 5 here, x equals 1. Over here, again, we're subtracting 5. We're going to get x equals 11. So 2 solutions for question number 2. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and erase my work and go ahead and take a look at example number 3. We'll go pink. Again, I need my equation in the form of x squared plus bx equals d. And I'm looking at my equation and it's not quite in that form. So we're going to go ahead and add 32 to both sides. So we create this new equation in the form that we want. So we have x squared minus 4x equals 32. Now it's in the right form for us to go ahead and identify what b is. B in this case is negative 4. So I take my b, cut it in half, and square it. So negative 4 cut in half, then squared is negative 2 to the second power, which is positive 4. That's my c. I then go ahead and insert it on both sides of my equation. Plus 4 goes there, and then also on the right side. Next step is to simplify. So I'm going to go ahead and write this as a binomial to the second power. So it's going to be x. My middle term is negative, so it's going to be minus. And if you remember, if I take my b and cut it in half, that's the value in my factor. So negative 4 cut in half is negative 2, and that's why I see x minus 2 to the second power. Then I have 32 plus 4, which is 36. From here, we're going to take the square root on both sides. The square root of x minus 2 to the second power is going to be x minus 2. On the other side, I get a plus and a minus, oh dear, plus and a minus 6. Now I go ahead and take it into two little mini math problems. I've got x minus 2 equals positive 6. I also have x minus 2 equals negative 6. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I get x equals 8. Oh, I wrote this wrong. This should be x minus 2 equals negative 6. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I'll get x equals negative 4. So I have two solutions there. My two roots, my two zeros. One way to check this is to go ahead and take Desmos and graph this, and you'll see exactly where it crosses, so you have an idea if you're completing the square method properly if you get the same values of x equaling 8 and x equaling negative 4. You could also take your value and plug it in and see what you get. So if we were to plug in 8 into x squared minus 4x minus 32, it should equal 0. And also if I plug negative 4 in for the x's, it should equal 0. Okay, we're going to take a look at our last two examples. So now we're on example 4. We'll go blue for this one. Maybe not. We'll try red. All right, so again, I need it in the form of x squared plus bx equals d, which it is not, so I'm going to go ahead and add 48 to both sides. We get a new equation of x squared minus 2x equals 48. Identify your b, which in this case is -2. So we're going to take our b, cut it in half, and then square it. So -2 cut in half is -1. And when we square -1, we get a +1. That's our c. So we're going to take our equation and insert it on the left side and also insert it on the right side. Because whatever we do on one side of the equation, we must do on the other as well. So from here, I can go ahead and recognize I have a perfect square trinomial. I'm going to take whatever my b was, cut it in half, which is -1, and that's my factor to the second power. 48 plus 1 is 49. All of these examples, my constant or d value turns out to be a perfect square. So we're going to go ahead and take the square root on both sides. The square root of x minus 1 to the second power is just going to be x minus 1. The square root of 49 is plus or minus 7. Break this into two mini math problems. X minus 1 equals 7, but also x minus 1 equals -7. Solve these by adding 1 to both sides. And we have two possible solutions. We've got one more example to go. Again, if you need to go back and review any of the examples, take it slower, go right for it. Again, we need our equation in x squared plus bx equals d form. This one is not that case. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 15 on both sides. We're going to get x squared plus 8x equals -15. Identify your b, which in this case is 8. Take your b, cut it in half, and square it. So 8 cut in half, and then squared is going to be 4 squared, which is 16. So we're going to take our equation and insert that. That 16 is c. We're going to insert it here on the left side, but also on the right side. When I took b and cut it in half, the value was 4. So I have x plus 4, and on the other side, I've got 1. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 4 to the second power. When I take the square root of that, I could just get x plus 4. And on the other side, I get plus or minus 1. Go ahead and write it into two different equations. X plus 4 equals 1, and x plus 4 equals -1. Go ahead and subtract 4 on both sides. We'll get x equals -3, and we'll also get x equals -5. And we're done. We went ahead and completed the square doing 5 different examples. Check back if you have questions. Review it, watch it twice.